tonight on CBC Vancouver News. A town of 2,400 told to pack up and leave. Tumbler Ridge residents scramble to get out as wildfire approaches. Plus, bracing for a third straight summer of drought.
In November, we trucked water over from, I think it was Mission, which on one hand seems insane.
The building frustration on the Sunshine Coast, and a cultural repatriation 140 years in the making.
I'm ready to cry.
Why a BC First Nation is paying $40,000 to bring an artifact home.
This is CBC Vancouver News.
A startling look at just one of the fires burning in our province tonight. The West Kiskatinaw River fire burning in northeast BC, some 69 kilometers south of Dawson Creek, is now threatening the nearby municipality of Tumbler Ridge. Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Anita Bathe. There are 82 wildfires burning across BC tonight, but we begin with that one in Tumbler Ridge, where this afternoon all 2,400 residents have been told to grab essentials and leave. For more on this evolving situation, let's turn to the CBC Vancouver News at 11 host, Dan Burritt. Dan?
Anita, if you live in Tumbler Ridge, you need to leave now. Officials say the West Kiskatinaw River wildfire is now a threat to human life. First of all, here's what you absolutely need to know. Take a look. Evacuees are asked to take Highway 29 out of town. You are not able to take Highway 52. It is closed. There are several places you can now go to register. We'll list them here. The District Town Hall in Chetwynd. You can also register at the Ovintiv Centre in Dawson Creek. And just a few moments ago, we got a note from Tumbler Ridge District that Fort St. John has been added as a third reception center. It's the Pomeroy Sports Center on 96th Street in Fort St. John. You can register there as well. The West Kiskatinaw River wildfire is estimated to be 96 square kilometers large, 24 times the size of Stanley Park. It's anywhere from 15 to 20 kilometers away from Tumbler Ridge, fueled by strong wind. It's already prompted other smaller evacuation orders for some sparsely populated regions.
And we won't see a reprieve in terms of wind direction, probably until 2 days from now, when they should shift back into a normal pattern and push the fire back east, which would help. It kind of burns into itself. But then on the other side, the eastern side of the fire, we're expecting some pretty significant growth.
Again, if you're in Tumbler Ridge, you're asked to leave, take Highway 29 out of town. You can't take Highway 52, and you can register at either the District Town Hall in Chetwynd or at the Ovintiv Centre in Dawson Creek, as well as at the Pomeroy Sports Centre on 96th Street in Fort St. John. You can also register online at ess.gov.bc.ca. We'll bring you any updates when they come out later tonight and on our late news at 11. Anita.
Dan Burritt reporting for us tonight. Thank you, Dan. Meteorologist Russ LeCate joins us now, stepping in for Johanna tonight. Russ, I know you're watching the situation carefully in the northeast of the province. What is the latest?
Well, yeah, further to what Dan was talking about, exactly. The fire right now near Tumbler Ridge is in a problematic area. The fine fuel moisture codes are so high. Everything is very dry, so it's so easy for fires to be triggered and for them to continue to propagate. The wind coming from the east, pushing that fire closer towards Tumbler Ridge, driven by the high that's over the northern prairies right now. That feature begins to disappear over time. So once we get into the weekend, this map shows a lot of precipitation. I don't entirely believe that. It's likely going to be in the trace to maybe 1 millimeter amount for the areas around the fire-ravaged regions. However, the flow comes from the west and begins to usher that out of the area. So significant rainfall, Anita, that might be 5 to 7 days away, but we get a helper this weekend.
All right, Russ, thank you. The province, meanwhile, is bracing for a, quote, very challenging fire season and is asking everyone to be prepared, but also to avoid hoarding essential supplies. Emergency Management Minister Bowen Ma says whether you live near an active wildfire or not, British Columbians should have an emergency plan as well as a grab-and-go kit, including ID and insurance papers, and should be ready to leave at a moment's notice. Ma also warns that while hotels have been an option in previous fire seasons, this year they are not guaranteed.
We have seen a significant resumption of travel and tourism, which means that hotels are not as widely available as they were in 2021. As a result, accommodation may look different in the event of significant evacuations, with greater emphasis on group lodging at community centers and on billeting.
99% of this year's fire activity so far has been concentrated in the Prince George Fire Center, which, as we just heard, includes the forests near Tumbler Ridge. And tensions are rising in the small city of Port Alberni as the major highway connecting West Vancouver Island and the rest of the province remains blocked because of a wildfire. Highway 4 has been closed for 3 days because of that Cameron Bluffs blaze. That's leaving drivers with a long and windy detour along forest logging roads for supplies and travel. For more on this, I'm joined by Claire Palmer. Claire, you're in Lake Cowichan right now. What have you been seeing and hearing today?
Well, as you said, it is the third day of the highway closures here. As we learned yesterday, the closures aren't due to the flames, but from the debris on the highway. It's been very busy in this area. We've been seeing lots of dusty cars who've been making their way off of that detour because this is where the detour does end. I did also speak with some gas stations and grocers in Port Alberni who say that they're feeling the squeeze of the supply chain. However, trucks are still getting through on that detour, so there's no supply chain issues yet.
What we need out of that detour is to keep the flow of goods coming in and out of our community. So, being able to keep that road as clear as possible for commercial vehicles to bring food supplies in, to bring fuel in, that's absolutely critical to us, and just making sure that it's not compromised by people who are maybe driving with not suitable vehicles for purposes that are not essential, and then slowing down the flow of goods even further.
Yeah, and Highway 4 is obviously a pretty essential route for people there. This detour set up along the backcountry logging roads. What are residents telling you? What are people who are driving that road, regular people, telling you about it?
Yeah, we are hearing that it is a fairly dirty and gravelly logging road. The Ministry of Transportation did describe it as being narrow, a lot of single-lane bridges and sharp corners. There is also no cell reception, washrooms, or gas stations along the way. Our colleagues over at Check News did report a couple of vehicle rollovers this morning. We also made a stop in Yubo at an auto shop where we've been told that they were quite busy fixing up things like flat tires. However, spirits seem to be high, and Yubo locals are excited to show newcomers the area.
The roads have just been inundated with so many people. There are convoy after convoy of just so many new vehicles coming through the road, and they look so tired and dusty and hot and hungry when they get here.
So far, there is no timeline on when the highway will be reopening due to slope instability and debris on the road. Officials have said that even after the fire is out, the closure is likely to continue. However, once crews get the all clear, they'll be able to move in and start repairing the highway and clearing the road so that cars can continue.
Claire Palmer reporting from Lake Cowichan on Vancouver Island. Thank you, Claire. Okay, and we've actually just learned that the detour we were just talking about will be closed tomorrow from 1 p.m. until 9 p.m. so that crews can remove a vehicle that rolled into the lake along that detour. We've also confirmed that gas stations in Port Alberni did actually run out of gas this morning as well, so things have been pretty tense in the area. Now, this year has already been one of the most devastating wildfire seasons in provincial history. Since April 1st, 382 fires have burned more than 520,000 hectares. So how did we get here and so early in the season? To get a better understanding of all of it, I had the chance to speak with a wildfire expert, Dr. Lori Daniels, earlier today. Take a look. Lori Daniels, it's hard to predict from year to year, but can you tell us why we're so convinced that the rest of this summer is going to be so bad?
Yeah, that's a great question, Anita. And we don't know with certainty yet. Let's all hope for more rain between now and the end of June so that we can be bringing the fire danger down. I was just looking at the fire danger map for British Columbia. Almost, 2/3 to 3/4 of the province are in high to extreme. And it's only the first week in June. That means that we've had very little rain, and these very warm temperatures that we've been enjoying are also drying out the forests and the vegetation around us. And as that warm, dry conditions kind of ramp up, it dries out the forests and makes it easier for any ignition, lightning or human, to cause a fire that would spread, get out of control, and have major impacts. And of course, we're already seeing that in the northeast of the province, where we've had very large fires start almost a month ago now. And we now have a fire that is approaching, the second largest fire ever on record, and a very large area burned up in the northeast of the province with huge consequences to citizens, to ecosystems. And again, we've seen that also all across our nation.
Well, for the third year in a row, BC's Sunshine Coast is facing a water crisis. The community is now making preparations to conserve water, but they know it may not be enough. As Renee Filipponi tells us, residents are feeling frustrated with their new reality.
The Sloan brothers started their business just last year.
1, 2, 3.
Installing rainwater tanks on the Sunshine Coast, and business is booming.
Started out installing rainwater tanks for our family and friends. We kept getting mobbed by their neighbors, asking us to install tanks for them.
This is going to be so
This customer hired them because she wants enough water this year to keep her plants and fruit trees alive.
This tank is arguably a little bit overkill, but her attitude was, I've got the space, right? And you're never gonna be upset because you have too much water.
For years, this coastal community north of Vancouver and reachable only by boat has seen droughts and severe water restrictions. It's only June, and residents are worried about how bad it could get this year.
It's very concerning. I mean, we're proactive, we're trying to plan for it.
There is a push to conserve, but the community is pointing fingers in many directions. At increased development, government red tape on new water projects, the impact of forestry on the watershed, and climate change.
We're just waiting to turn on the valve.
This is one of the well pumps the district is hoping to get online soon. It will help, but may not be enough to stop another water crisis this year.
And our summers are hotter, they're drier, and the dry period is lasting longer. And in fact, we fully expect it to happen again in 2023.
Because we can't water them, or we haven't.
Brian Smith runs this farm and brewery. Last year, water use restrictions forced him to truck in water from the Fraser Valley. He says the ongoing crisis is having an impact on people's mental health.
Stress in terms of customers saying, hey, are you guys, going to get cut off? Stress from employees who wondered if they were going to lose their jobs because we might be cut off.
He says with no long-term solution in sight, there's a feeling of doom for many on the Sunshine Coast. Renee Filipponi, CBC News, Gibsons, BC.
The province has hired a well-known mediator to try and bring the 4-month transit strike in the eastern Fraser Valley to an end. Vince Reddy has been tapped for the top job. He's tasked with helping the union representing more than 200 transit workers and the operator, First Transit, reach a deal. Workers are striking for a pension plan, more regularly scheduling practices, and a wage increase to reach parity with other transit workers in nearby regions. Reddy will have 10 days to help the two sides reach an agreement. If they don't, Reddy will be able to issue recommendations to end the strike. He has arbitrated and mediated more than 600 collective agreements, including the recent transit strike along the Sea to Sky Highway. And the longtime CEO of the Vancouver Aquarium has died after a battle with cancer. John Nightingale led the aquarium for more than 25 years. He founded Oceanwise, a global ocean conservation organization. An obituary says Nightingale died peacefully while looking out of his sunny patio in Vernon, surrounded by family and music. A celebration of life will be held in the fall. John Nightingale was 75. Well, amongst all of the bad news, some good. Whales on our coast are on the rebound with plenty of humpbacks, orcas, and more. On World Ocean Day, a whale celebration is next. Thanks for watching our commercial-free live stream tonight. A new program at Vancouver's Langara College is pairing students with elders to write memoirs of residential school survivors. As Janella Hamilton tells us, stories chronicling one of the darkest chapters of Canadian history are now being published.
Squamish First Nation elder Sam George recounts what he calls 8 years of abuse and neglect at St. Paul's Indian Residential School in North Vancouver after he and his brother were taken away from their family when he was only 6 years old.
The first day, like grade 1, I seen 2 brothers get beat up by a nun quite severely because they were speaking their language.
George says he barely survived his experience, and it wound up leading him into a life of addiction, crime, violence, and incarceration.
I went to Ocala prison at 15 years old. Very scary place.
Now he's sharing his story in a memoir called The Fire Still Burns: Life in and After Residential School.
Writing it down, getting it all out there, really looking at myself and trying to be honest about it. And just getting it out and say, okay, that's me. I was like that, I'm not that way anymore.
George's is one of 5 memoirs written in collaboration with students and educators, a part of Langara College's Writing Lives program.
There's a real emotional process to having the students learn to really care for the elders, right? So they're not just interviewing them and asking questions and badgering them, but they're working to slowly build the relationship and build the trust.
Tanis Wilson is an off-reservation member of the Constance Lake First Nation in northeastern Ontario. She was one of the students who worked closely with George on his memoir.
He had to be really vulnerable to do this. I think it's a really brave thing that he's doing, and he just really encouraged me to remember that, like, as Indigenous peoples, our fire can never burn out.
The course involves developing a relationship with elders, sitting for several interviews to record their stories, which are then organized and edited under the approval of the elder.
It's a privilege to be able to actually, sit down with someone and hold space for them.
George's memoir takes readers from his early childhood to what he remembers as the horrors of St. Paul's and its devastating aftermath. It ends with him finding a way forward in life by reconnecting with culture. He says it's a story of survival and rebuilding after trauma.
I had to look at myself. A very big step in healing. Knowing who I was, knowing who I am.
Janella Hamilton, CBC News, North Vancouver.
The City of Richmond has installed an ocean trash collector at the mouth of the Fraser River to help reduce the amount of plastic in the ocean. Located in the Steveston Fisherman's Wharf, it sucks in waste like granola bar wrappers, plastic bottles, styrofoam, and fishing nets. It can even collect liquid waste that floats on the surface. The pilot project is volunteer-led by Swim, Drink, Fish Canada, which plans to audit the garbage to better understand what's ending up in our oceans. This is the first device to be installed on the west coast of North America. And they attract a crowd, usually hoping to get a rare glimpse, but that sighting is becoming more common. Whales are on the rebound in BC's coastal waters. For World Ocean Day, we are speaking with a Salish Sea whale watcher on what makes the experience so captivating.
We are in the Wanapeka Strait, part of the Salish Sea. The water conditions are, it's about a 3-foot, very relaxed roll coming in from the Pacific with a bit of a wind rip on it. The wind is filling in a little bit, it's not too bad. We've got about 5 vessels spread out over about a half square mile plus in the presence of 2 humpback whales that are having a good time. In terms of the guest expectations, we try to set those expectations earlier on in their experience. You know, we're in the presence of nature, we're guests in their house, it is what it is. We can't control anything except our presence. And if we feel like we're overstaying our welcome, we'll leave, we'll go off and try to find something else. And we just need to really acknowledge that we're just here to witness and watch. We don't want to change their natural life processes or change their behavior or cause them to do anything out of the ordinary. Now these critters, you've got 2 animals here. They don't have families, they don't have mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, and they don't stay together. They have very large communities with these beautiful little social circles or friendship groups. I'll be honest, I've come out here when the sun has set, you know, later on the season when you start to get those large aggregations of animals. You'll come out here without a breath of wind. It'll be flat, calm like a lake, which does happen on occasion, even on the ocean. And it's dark out, maybe there's no moon. You just pick a spot, engines off, and you just drift, and you just listen to them breathing. There's nothing that will put you more in the moment. You can only really preserve and protect what you come to know and understand and love. So it's very important to develop a connection. That's often through education. Through education and experience, you develop an emotional connection. That emotional connection causes you to maybe think 2 or 3 times about what you put in the garbage, how you recycle, what you put down the drain. That's where it really starts.
A long journey home. The Taku Tlingit Nation in northern BC celebrating tonight after an historic blanket was returned. That return comes at a cost. We'll tell you more next.
In central British Columbia, the people of a small logging town have joined together to fight the recession. Workers at a local mill have agreed to cut their pay, and merchants have lowered their prices. As Jerry Thompson tells us, their sacrifices are starting to pay dividends.
There are all kinds of things to worry about in Vanderhoof. 20% unemployment, millions of mosquitoes just hatched, it's hot, dusty, and the market for local lumber is as flat as Main Street. But the recession could have been a lot worse. The Bond Brothers sawmill has managed to stay alive by convincing its 100 employees to accept a 10% pay cut.
If you're bleeding to death and you stuff something over the bleeding, you don't really cure the patient, you just reduce the bleeding and maybe he'll live.
The wage cut saves $1,800 a day, but the company is still losing money. The cut came at Christmas when the market for 2x4s was at its lowest. From Chicago to Miami, American lumber yards told Mike Bond to cut his prices. So the mill lost nearly $1 million because the inventory devalued overnight.
We're still making enough money to get by, and it's a lot better than unemployment. I voted yes personally last December, mainly because I thought that the company was going down.
We thought by taking a wage cut for a brief period of time that we'd be able to keep our employer happy and keep our jobs at the same time till market conditions got better.
Canada's big labor unions are dead set against wage concessions, and some people here were pretty skeptical about the necessity of it all. But the workers at this mill belong to the Christian Labor Association, a small independent union. When they voted 70% in favor of the pay cut, the local credit union followed suit with a rollback of interest rates, and several merchants in town agreed to give retail discounts to Bond Brothers employees.
I think people around here are looking out for each other more than other communities that I've seen.
And now, because the market has improved slightly, the company is giving back half of the wage cut and will give back more if things get better. One thing this community seems to have going for it is stability. It's in a rather remote part of BC's northern interior, but people like it here. So just because there's a downturn in the economy, labor and management don't give up. They decide to stick it out and make a go of it. Jerry Thompson, CBC News in Vanderhoof, BC.
In celebration of Indigenous History Month, the City of Vancouver is resuming a program to display more Indigenous artwork in public spaces. It supports local artists by showcasing their work throughout the city. This year, 21 artists have been commissioned to create unique artwork, some of which is already on display. Take a look.
The thing that I love about the Platforms program is that it has such a short production time. And what that means is we're able to tap into what is front and center in people's minds and artists' minds right now. So for example, when we had the COVID response platforms, artists were creating work about what that means, right? Like to be isolated, to be afraid, to have this worldwide pandemic happening. And with this Platforms 9 Places for Seeing, we asked the Indigenous artists, what's first and foremost in your mind right now? What are the things that are finding expression in your artworks? And so this way we were able to basically use this program, this temporary 2D program, in order to tap into what Indigenous artists are concerned with right now.
To the north now, and a celebration for the Taku River Tlingit First Nation. An intricately woven wool and cedar rope blanket is on its way home. Now, its first stop is Whitehorse before making its way south to Atlin, BC. As Cheryl Kawaja reports, the return comes at a price.
Anticipation and joy at the Whitehorse Airport.
I'm ready to cry because it's back where it belongs.
As a special cargo and clan leaders arrive, a heartfelt welcome.
We brought her home!
This marks the return of a cherished woven Chilkat blanket taken from the community sometime in the 1800s.
I've always dreamt of, is there a Chilkat blanket that's ever going to come back to our community? This is a big deal.
In a simple box marked fragile, the blanket is a direct connection to the Taku River Tlingit ancestors.
It's our culture calling to us to come get it, for us to go get it, for us to come and celebrate it, because that's what we're trying to do every day. There's so much oppression.
The blanket was in an unknown private collection. It appeared up for auction in Toronto last fall. Luckily, it was spotted by an avid art collector originally from the local community. After a nail-biting bidding war and tens of thousands of dollars, it's here. Paying to repatriate or rematriate this piece of their own history makes this joyous homecoming a little bittersweet. Elder Kaiushi O'Shea hopes whoever profited from the sale might come to know the story and significance, maybe even give back the money.
The person would have feelings later down the road and return it, and the youth could use it.
But today is about celebration. This summer, the community will officially unveil, honor, and welcome the return of this long-missing treasured robe in Atlin, northern BC. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Meteorologist Russ Kate in for Johanna today. Russ, let's start again with Tumbler Ridge, where the town, northeastern BC, 2,400 people forced out because of wildfire. I think people are hoping for more rain than what's coming.
Exactly, yes. We have a little bit of good news, but mostly it's just information that we're providing to our viewers today to assist, because the Tumbler Ridge fire, the temperature maximum was 31 degrees today, again with an easterly flow wrapping around that northern prairie high. That's going to persist during the day tomorrow. So as we look towards Friday morning, the high is still in place over the northern prairies. We start to see a bit of an inverted trough bringing some precipitation into our southern BC forecast. I know, imagine that rainfall forecast. We haven't seen that for a while. Very little of it in the fire-ravaged region of Tumbler Ridge. The easterly wind will persist. Tomorrow is a really tough day in those fire zones. But over the course of the weekend, as the onshore flow continues to push farther inland, we'll see a shift in the breeze for Tumbler Ridge. That'll help out for the second half of the weekend. Over the far south there, well, we're introducing some precipitation. It's in parts of your 7-day forecast, specifically tomorrow night, maybe into Saturday morning as well. After that, Anita, rebounding to generally sunny conditions, not as hot as it has been. No more 30-plus temperatures around here.
That's good news for a lot of people around this province.
Indeed.
Thanks, Russ. That is it for our show tonight. Thanks for being with us on CBC Vancouver News. Dan Burrett will be your host tomorrow night. Good night.